go to heaven when we die? It's a question that has tormented human minds since we've had the capacity for that kind of thinking. Do we go anywhere? It can be comforting, at times necessary, to believe that there is a cosmic purpose to the suffering that seems to go without meaning on Earth. A dark inversion of this idea is that we have passed through the veil. This is the afterlife, and not the good one. Could Earth be some kind of alien prison colony, the Australia of the Milky Way? Or is this, right here, some circle of Christian hell? Harlan Ellison, in his introduction to this story, says, hell, I don't know. Maybe there is a better life, and maybe this is the better life. What a pisser that'd be. This is Strange Wine by Harlan Ellison. Two whipcord lean California highway patrolmen supported Willis Cole between them, leading him from the cruiser to the blanket-covered shape in the middle of the Pacific Coast Highway. The dark brown smear that began 60 yards west of the covered shape disappeared under the blanket. He heard one of the onlookers say she was thrown all that way, oh it's awful, and he didn't want them to show him his daughter. But he had to make the identification, and one of the cops held him securely as the other went to one knee and pulled back the blanket. He recognized the jade pendant he had given her for graduation. It was all he recognized. "That's Debbie," he said, and turned his head away. "Why is this happening to me?" he thought. "I'm not from here. I'm not one of them. This should be happening to a human." "Did you take your shot?" He looked up from the newspaper and asked her to repeat what she had said. "I asked you," Estelle said very softly, with as much kindness as she had left in her, "if you took your insulin." He smiled briefly, recognizing her concern and her attempt to avoid invading his sorrow, and he said he had taken the shot. His wife nodded and said, "Well, I think I'll go upstairs now. Are you coming?" "Not right now. In a little, maybe." "You'll fall asleep in front of the set again." "Don't worry about it. I'll be up in a little while." She stood watching him for a moment longer, then turned and climbed up the stairs. He listened for the sounds of the upstairs ritual, the toilet flushing, the water moving through the pipes to the sink, the clothes closet door squeaking as it was opened, the bed springs responding as Estelle put herself down for the night. And then he turned on the television set. He turned to channel 30, one of the empty channels, and turned down the volume control so he did not have to hear the sound of coaxial snow. He sat in front of the set for several hours, his right hand flat against the picture tube, hoping the scanning pattern of the electron bombardment would reveal, through palm flesh grown transparent, the shape of alien bones. In the middle of the week, he asked Harvey Rothammer if he could have the day off Thursday, so he could drive to the hospital in Fontana to see his son. Rothammer was not particularly happy about it, but he didn't have the heart to refuse. Cole had lost his daughter, and the son was still 95% incapacitated, lying in a therapy bed with virtually no hope of ever walking again. So he told Willis Cole to take the day off, but not to forget that April was almost upon them, and for a firm of certified public accountants, it was rush season. Willis Cole said he knew that. The car broke down 20 miles east of San Dimas, and he sat behind the wheel in the bludgeoning heat, staring at the desert and trying to remember what the surface of his home planet looked like. His son, Gilvin, had gone on vacation to visit friends in New Jersey the summer before. The friends had installed a freestanding swimming pool in the backyard. Gil had dived in and struck bottom. He had broken his back. Fortunately, they pulled him out before he could drown, but he was paralyzed from the waist down. He could move his arms, but not his hands. Willis had gone east and arranged to have Gil flown to California, and there he lay, in a bed in Fontana. He could remember only the color of the sky. It was a brilliant green, quite lovely, and things that were not birds, that skimmed instead of flying. More than that, he could not remember. The car was towed back to San Dimas, but the garage had to take off to Los Angeles for the necessary parts. He left the car and took a bus back home. He did not get to see Gil that week. The repair bill was $286.45. That March, the 11-month drought in Southern California broke. Rain thundered down without end for a week, not as heavily as it does in Brazil, where the drops are so thick and come so close together that people have been known to suffocate if they walk out in the downpour, but heavily enough that the roof of the house sprang leaks. Willis Corr and Estelle stayed up one entire night, stuffing towels against the baseboards in the living room. But the leaks from the roof apparently weren't over the outer walls, but rather in low spots, somewhere in the middle. The water was running down and trickulating through. In the next morning, depressed beyond endurance, Willis Corr began to cry. Estelle heard him as she was loading the soaking towels into the dryer and ran into the living room. He was sitting on the wet carpet, the smell of mildew rising in the room, his hands over his face, still holding a wet bath towel. She knelt down beside him and took his head in her hands and kissed his forehead. He did not stop crying for a very long time, and when he did, his eyes burned. "It only ever rains in the evening where I come from," he said to her, but she didn't know what he meant. When she realized later, she went for a walk, trying to decide if she could help her husband. He went to the beach, parked on the shoulder just off the old Malibu road, locked the car, and trotted down to the embankment of the beach. He walked along the sand for an hour, picking up milky glass worn smooth by the Pacific, and finally he lay down on the slope of a small weed-thatched dune and went to sleep. He dreamed of his home world, and perhaps because the sun was high and the ocean made eternal sounds, he was able to bring much of it back. The bright green sky, the skimmers swooping and rising overhead, the motes of pale yellow light that flamed then floated up and were lost to sight. He felt himself in his real body, the movement of many legs working in unison, carrying him across the mist sands, the smell of alien flowers in his mind. He knew he had been born on that world, had been raised there, had grown to maturity and then sent away. In his human mind, Willis Corr knew he had been sent away for doing something bad. He knew he had been condemned to this planet, this earth, for having committed a crime, but he could not remember what it was, and in the dream he could feel no guilt. But when he woke, his humanity came back and flooded over him, and he felt guilt, and he longed to be back out there where he belonged, not trapped in this terrible body. "I didn't want to come to you," Willis Corr said. "I think it's stupid, and if I come, then I admit there's room for doubt, and I don't doubt," so the psychiatrist smiled and stirred a cup of cocoa. "And so you came because your wife insisted?" "Yes." He stared at his shoes. They were brown shoes. He had owned them for over 3 years. They had never fit properly. They pinched and made his big toe on each foot feel as if it were being pressed down by a knife edge, a dull knife edge. The psychiatrist carefully placed the spoon on a piece of Kleenex and sipped at his cocoa. "Look, Mr. Corr, I'm open to suggestion. I don't want you to be here, nor do you want to be here, if it isn't going to help you. And," he added quickly, "by help you, I don't mean convert you to any worldview, any systematized belief you choose to reject. I'm not entirely convinced by Freud or Werner Erhard or Scientology or any other rigor that there is such a thing as reality, codified reality, a given and immutable constant. As long as what someone believes doesn't get them put in a madhouse or a prison, there's no reason why it should be less acceptable than what we, straight folks call reality. If it makes you happy, believe it. What I'd like to do is listen to what you have to say, perhaps offer a few comments, and then see if your reality is compatible with straight folks' reality. How does that sound to you?" Willis Corr tried to smile back. "It sounds fine. I'm a little nervous." "Well, try not to be. That's easy for me to say and hard for you to do, but I mean you no harm. I'm really quite interested." Willis uncrossed his legs and stood up. "Is it alright if I just walk around the office a little?" "It'll help, I think." The psychiatrist nodded and smiled and indicated to the cocoa. Willis Corr shook his head. He walked around the psychiatrist's office and finally said, I don't belong in this body. I've been condemned to life as a human being, and it is killing me. The psychiatrist asked him to explain. Willis Cole was a small man with thinning brown hair and bad eyes. He had weak legs and constantly had need of handkerchief. His face was set in lines of worry and sadness. He told the psychiatrist all this, and then he said, I believe this planet is a place where bad people are sent to atone for their crimes. I believe that all of us come from other worlds, other planets where we have done something wrong. This Earth is a prison, and we are sent here to live in these awful bodies that decay and smell bad and run down and die. And that's our punishment. But why do you perceive such a condition and no one else? The psychiatrist had set aside the cocoa and it was growing cold. This must be a defective body they've put me in, Willis Core said. Just a little extra pain, knowing I'm an alien, knowing I'm serving a prison sentence for something I did, something I can't remember. But it must have been an awful thing for me to have drawn such a sentence. Have you ever read Franz Kafka, Mr. Core? No. He wrote books about people who were on trial for crimes the nature of which they never learned. People who were guilty of sins they didn't know they had committed. Yes, I feel that way. Maybe Kafka felt that way. Maybe he had a defective body too. What you're feeling isn't too strange, Mr. Cole, the psychiatrist said. We have many people these days who are dissatisfied with their lives, who find out, perhaps too late, that they are a transsexual, that they should have been living their days as something else, a man, a woman. No, that isn't what I mean. I'm not a candidate for a sex change. I'm telling you I come from a world with a green sky, with mist sand and light motes that flame then float up. I have many legs, webs between digits, and they aren't fingers. He stopped and looked embarrassed. Then he sat down and spoke softly. Doctor, my life is like everyone else's life. I'm sick much of the time. I have bills I cannot pay. My daughter was struck by a car and killed, and I cannot bear to think about it. My son was cut off in the prime of his life, and he'll be a cripple from now on. My wife and I don't talk much. We don't love each other, if we ever did. I'm no better and no worse than anyone on this planet. That's what I'm talking about. The pain, the anguish, living in terror each day. Hopeless, empty. Is this the best a person can have, this terrible life here as a human being? I tell you, there are better places. Other worlds where the torture of being a human being doesn't exist. It was growing dark in the psychiatrist's office. Willis Core's wife had made an appointment for him at the last moment, and the doctor had taken the little man with the thinning brown hair as a fill-in at the end of the day. Mr. Core, the psychiatrist said, I've listened to all you've said, and I want you to know that I'm very much in sympathy with your fears. Willis Core felt relieved. He felt at last someone might be able to help him, if not relieve him of this terrible knowledge and its weight, at least tell him that he wasn't alone. And frankly, Mr. Core, the psychiatrist said, I think you're a man with a very serious problem. You're a sick man and you need intense psychiatric help. I'll talk to your wife if you like, but if you take my advice, you'll have yourself placed in a proper institution before this condition. Willis Core closed his eyes. He pulled down the garage door tight and stuffed the cracks with rags. He could not find a hose long enough to feed back into the car from the tailpipe, so he merely opened the car windows and started the engine and let it run. He sat in the back seat and tried to read Dickens' Dombey and Son, a book Gill had once told him he would enjoy. But he couldn't keep attention on the story, on the elegant language. After a while he let his head fall back, and he tried to sleep, to dream of the other world that had been stolen from him, the world he knew that he would never see. Finally, sleep took him, and he died. The funeral service was held at Forest Lawn, and very few people came. It was a weekday. Estelle cried, and Harvey Rothammer held her, but he was checking his wristwatch over his shoulder, because April was almost upon him. And Willis Cole was put down in the warm ground, and the dirt of an alien planet was jumped in on him by a Chicano with 3 children, who was forced to moonlight as a dishwasher in a bar and grill because he simply couldn't meet the payments on his 6-piece living room suite if he didn't. The many-legged consul greeted Willis Core when he returned. He turned over and looked up at the consul and saw the bright green sky above. Welcome back, Plido, the consul said. He looked very sad. Plido, who had been Willis Core on a faraway world, got to his feet and looked around. Home. But he could not keep silent and enjoy the moment. He had to know. Consul, please, tell me. What did I do that was so terrible? Terrible? The consul seemed stunned. We owe you nothing but honor, your grace. Your name is valued above all the others. There was a deep reverence in his words. Then why was I condemned to live in anguish on that other world? Why was I sent away to exist in torment? The consul shook his hairy head, and his mane billowed in the warm breeze. No, your grace, no. Anguish is what we suffer. Torment is all we know. Only a very few honored and loved among all the races of the universe can go to that world. Life there is sweet compared to what passes for life everywhere else. You are still disoriented. It will all come back to you. You will remember, and you will understand. And Plido, who had been, in a better part of his almost eternal life of pain, Willis Core, did remember. As time passed, he recalled all the eternities of sadness that had been born in him. And he knew that they had given him the only gift of joy permitted to the races of beings who lived in the far galaxies. The gift of a few precious years in a world where anguish was so much less than that known everywhere else. He remembered the rain and the sleep and the feel of the beach sand beneath his feet and the ocean rolling in to whisper its eternal song. And on such nights as those that he had despised on earth, he slept and dreamed good dreams of life as Willis Core on the Pleasure Planet.
Even in hell, sand spirals down. Alone in our torment, our songs can reach to each other. Even in the void, words bounce around. Echoes compound into another world that we can escape to, that we can escape to. At least I hope there's somewhere left to go that we can all make it through.